My book was Huckleberry Finn, or The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. It has a low Lexile of 980, so it's a pretty easy read. Anyone can read it. The way that Mark Twain writes this book is a little bit difficult to read, but in my opinion, the words that he uses just gives the book some kind of like messy and like true to how Huckleberry Finn would speak like back then, and it just gives it some more like authenticity, which is just always a hit for me. This is a really eventful book. Like, there's a lot of things that happen in it that will keep you interested for a long time. I got a little carried away sometimes while reading this. I just forget that, I have to go live life. And I think what's really good about this book is that throughout the book you get to see how Huckleberry Finn matures and grows and changes slowly throughout the book. I don't really like reading much, to be honest, but this was actually a pretty good book. I did choose it because my mom used to read it to us when I was like a kid, so that's why I was like drawn to it. I thought this book was actually pretty good for not liking to read and stuff. Anyway, the main character is Huckleberry Finn. He is a bit uneducated. Like the words that he uses, he's like young and a little bit illiterate. Huck also has a pretty foul mouth. So if you get offended easily, I probably wouldn't recommend this for you. What I like about Huckleberry Finn is that he has a super pure heart, and throughout the story, like in the beginning of the story, he is a bit angsty and tries to like act out a lot, and he just wants to go against all the rules and make the lady that he's living with angry all the time. But throughout the book, you really get to see how he goes against what society thought was wrong and dangerous at the time, and he ends up helping to save a fugitive slave named Jim. Another kind of important character, there's a lot of characters in this story, so I won't go over all of them, is Huckleberry's dad. In this story, he's written as a drunk. Like, he's the joke of the town, and no one, like, respects him. In the book, like, in the beginning of the book, he kidnaps Huck, and he takes him to a cabin outside of town, to, like, hide him away. After, like, a day of drinking, he'd come back home, the cabin. He'd come back to the cabin drunk, and he would come back to the cabin and beat Huckleberry. So that, after a while, that's kind of what drove Huck to run away. And that's where most of his adventures begin. A few of my favorite quotes in this book from Huckleberry is, "Humans can be awful cruel to one another." I like this quote because it's just like true, and we don't understand that sometimes what we think is acceptable, whether it be like who we're being influenced by and like who our friends are, or just what society says is right, can actually have a pretty major effect on someone. So yeah, it's a super simple quote by Huck, and I thought it was just perfect. And then another one is, "Alright, then I'll go to hell." I like this quote because it's him going against what society believes to be right and wrong. Like, he just doesn't care, you know? And I think that's just such a beautiful quote. I would say that, like, the moral of the story, there's a bunch of little messages hidden within this book that you could, interpret into your own. But what I think is, like, the main moral of the story is that, like, what society thinks is right and wrong may not always be what is right and, like, what is good. This was a really good book. Super short and, like, easy to read. Very interesting, and you could actually probably finish it really quickly. And it paints a really good picture in your head if you value that in a book.